Today, we're going to be discussing the Little League World Series and its commercialization. The main thesis that we decided to focus on was a larger cultural trend of commodifying childhood in American sports has been exposed by the Little League World Series, which was once in honor of youth baseball and community spirit, but has since been succeeded by corporate sponsorships, media contracts, and marketing interests that put profit and entertainment above the happiness and development of young athletes. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is heavy corporate sponsorships in the LLWS. Today, major corporations like ESPN, Gatorade, and Chick-fil-A dominate the Little League World Series with constant logos, signage, and ad placements. What once was a celebration of youth baseball now feels more like a branding bonanza. These companies aren't supporting the event out of generosity. They're using children's sports to market products and drive profits. It's a perfect example of how capitalism seeps into even the most innocent spaces of American life, which reflects how deeply embedded consumerism has become in our culture. As you can see by the pictures on my slide, even companies like Cherub, the tomato company, and T-Mobile and Frosted Flakes have sponsored this event in the past. Going along with this, television contracts and primetime coverage has caused issues within the LLWS. TV contracts like ESPN and ABC broadcast the Little League World Series live. With this professional level production and primetime spots, this often prioritizes viewership and ratings over the kids' well-being, like forcing games to run late or in extreme weather to meet broadcast schedules. It turns youth athletes into entertainment, which echoes broader themes from our class, such as how media and business interests can reshape the game and its meaning. Together, these issues expose a deeper cultural truth. In America, even childhood is commodified when there's a chance for profit. As scholar Jay Coakley argues, the commercialization of youth sports threatens to shift the focus from child development to entertainment and economic gain, a shift we're watching unfold in real time at the Little League World Series.
Next, I want to highlight how media pressure on children further reveals that the Little League World Series has become overly commercialized. The Little League World Series is supposed to be about kids, community, and growth, but today it's become a media-driven event, and that spotlight is putting real pressure on young players. And Little League pressure, get a grip, Buddy Thomas writes, for those people, personal success could determine their own, as well as their family's financial future. That's pressure. That kind of pressure is now showing up on Little League fields, which children are expected to perform not just for their teams, but for a national audience. One disturbing example came during a recent ESPN broadcast, which, as stated earlier, airs the game live. When a hot mic captured a coach urging a child to play through pain. That moment wasn't edited or protected, it was aired live. Immediately after, a player was overheard saying, it's for ESPN, so they, Northwest, can come back. That's because ESPN wants this. It's all ESPN, according to the Sporting News. When a child feels obligated to play through an injury to serve a media narrative, something is deeply wrong. These are kids, not entertainers, but their emotions, struggles, and even their pain are being used to drive ratings and drama. That's not development, that's exploitation. The intense media pressure on children is clear evidence that the Little League World Series has become overly commercialized. When the cameras matter more than the kids, we've lost sight of what youth sports are supposed to be.
Little League World Series has also become overly commercialized, specifically through the way it markets and profits from merchandise featuring kids. Every year, the LLWS sells tons of products, just like how they would be sold at a major league event. But unlike professional athletes, these young players don't see the money. That's a huge problem. It means corporations and broadcasters are making millions by exploiting children's names and achievements without fairly compensating them. Even in cases where kids do get the money, say through NIL deals, there's no guarantee that the money is protected. There have been growing concerns about parents mishandling those funds or pressuring their kids to perform in ways that aren't healthy. It raises serious ethical questions about whether parents are managing this money in their child's best interest or treating their kid like a business opportunity. This trend reflects a shift in the purpose of youth sports. Instead of being about having fun, learning teamwork, or a love for the game, there's a shifting focus on profit and fame. And that can put a lot of pressure on kids who just want to play baseball. One article from Global Sport Matters highlights how kids as young as 8 years old are now being pushed into NIL deals. At the same time, participation in team sports for ages 6 to 12 has dropped significantly from 45% to just 37% over the past decade. It suggests that the more money we throw into youth sports, the more we risk the more we risk pushing our kids out of them entirely.
Think that Little League Baseball has become overly commercialized is because the inflated costs for families. Although Little League International covers many expenses such as meals and accommodations once in Williamsport for the championship, families of the players are forced to pay all of the finances for the games and tournaments leading up to the championships, such as airfare, rental cars, and lodging. Parents are also forced to take their children to tournaments, which leads to lost wages and creating an even bigger burden. Parents are expected to pay for other necessities such as equipment and uniform. These charges can be as high as $10,000, and this can create a high financial burden on families that are in the working class. From the article, Little League, Big Expense, The Rising Cost of Youth Sports and Its Impact on Children and Communities by Jeremy Monk, he stated, if you're not upper middle class or middle class with 3 credit cards, you're going to have a hard time keeping your kids involved in sports. The cost of one kid playing can be $6,000 or $7,000. Where does that leave the average middle class family? As inflation occurred, the events became seen as more as a professional events, which in turn made the atmosphere more commercialized. This became a cycle and took away the whole idea of the recreational goal of Little League Baseball. Another major thing that led to commercialization was player overexposure. And the Little League has overexposed their players in the media, which is concerning because all of the players are minors and their parents are the ones allowing their photo to be taken. Players are put under a lot of pressure because of their overexposure, and it leads to children being under inspection from the public, which can cause self-doubt within the children. Having everything the kids do be televised can damage their self-esteem. If the child cries after a loss of a game, it is broadcasted all over the media. Mistakes and failures are shown to the whole world and can create trauma within each child. And even after a game, their entire performance is posted to the internet and highlight reels. Each game being televised highlights the commercialization of the event. The children do not consent to being filmed and having every little thing they do, such as team huddles, pep talks, and emotions, leads to the over-commercialization of the children and the game.
The commercialization of the LLWS also creates large audiences that can negatively impact kids playing in the Little League World Series. Instead of playing simply for fun or to grow as athletes, these young players often start playing to avoid embarrassment or to meet the expectations of fans, coaches, and even national commentators. When you're young and being broadcast to millions of people, that pressure is overwhelming. It can shift the entire mindset of the game from joy to anxiety. This pressure can quickly lead to emotional burnout. According to a study from the National Alliance for Youth Sports, around 70% of kids quit organized sports by the age of 13 because of a loss of enjoyment. The pressure becomes even more intense when those games are televised and mistakes aren't just noticed by your coach, but the entire country. This can be especially harmful for kids who base their identity on athletic success. As noted in a 2024 article by Berner and Watson, athletes who tie their self-worth to performance are at a higher risk for burnout, anxiety, and depression. The fear of failure or letting others down becomes so strong that the game is no longer fun. It becomes a source of stress. So while being in the spotlight may seem like a dream for some, for many young athletes, it's a fast track to losing the very thing that made them love baseball in the first place.
I want to highlight the existence of unfair focus on certain teams or regions when it comes to these many Little League teams. If you've been following the Little League World Series for a while, it wouldn't take long to notice that teams from larger markets or countries with more media appeal often receive more screen time and coverage than others. In an American Magazine article written by John Miller, he makes several states that support this claim, such as how national media outlets tend to put the spotlight on teams that have been more consistently dominant throughout Little League's history. This includes teams from states such as Texas, California, and New York. Meanwhile, teams from historically less successful, smaller states like North Dakota or Vermont receive minimal coverage even if they are performing at an outstanding level. Many of these more popular regions also have access to better facilities, coaching, as well as travel opportunities when compared to those other less popular regions. However, these are small details that the media chooses to forget when covering Little League Baseball.
Next, I'd like to address how the increasing commercialization of Little League World Series is negatively influencing coaching practices and player development. As the Little League World Series grows in media coverage and coverage sponsorship, coaching behavior is changing, and not for the better. The increasing pressure to win and perform for a national audience is shifting coaching from a developmental role to one driven by results and reputation. A clear example came during a game when Staten Island manager Nick Dosher struck one of his players on live television. As Associated Press and Fox News reported, the obscenity was clearly heard on ESPN's primetime broadcast of the game, just before the network cut to commercial. It appeared that Dosher then struck the player with an open hand. That's not just a loss of temper, it's a sign of how high the emotional stakes have become for adults on the sidelines. This pressure also leads to unethical decisions. The focused on Jackie Robinson West team, which is historically dominant, famously had its 2014 U.S. title revoked after coaches knowingly used ineligible players. Quote, "It is unfortunate that the actions of adults have led to this outcome," said Will Foster of SI Kids, capturing how adult ambition overshadowed integrity and left kids facing the consequences. Even when there's no scandal, the coaching philosophy has shifted. Coaches now focus on aggressive play, strict strategy, and pressure-packed moments that mimic professional sports. These approaches might win games, but they often come at the cost of sportsmanship, creativity, and long-term development. The role of the Little League coach to be to teach, support, and inspire, but with commercialization raising the stakes, coaches are being pushed to act more like high-level managers than more mentors, and that's hurting the kids most of all.
Little League has shifted away from the former spirits of youth sports. The sport no longer highlights the original goals of teamwork, growth, and fun. Instead, they are being overshadowed by money, fame, and adult interests. In a Financial Times article written by Patty Waldmeyer, the author talks about different reasons why the children's sport is changing in this way. Parents have been investing significant amounts of money in professional coaching and travel for their children's sports activities, aiming for college scholarships or professional careers. This shift has turned youth sports into a lucrative $30 billion to $40 billion industry. The disparity in spending between wealthy and low-income families has also enforced social inequalities. Experts argue that this trend limits opportunities for lower-income and minority children and reinforces the class divide. The increasing competitiveness in youth sports puts a lot of pressure on these children, making them equate their worth to their performance. They experience an all or nothing mindset, which can be harmful and oppresses the former values of growth and effort for the sake of just winning the game that's in front of them. Based on all these reasons we talked about throughout our presentation, the Little League World Series has become far too commercialized. Players often join the league as a way to enjoy a sport they love with their friends, but in return, they are put under immense pressure, which leads to them not enjoying the game that they once loved. They play as a way to escape the demand of school and they look for an outlet, but now their outlet has become the demand. Thank you for listening.